Welcome to another episode of Women Investing in Women. Robin and I take great joy and absolute commitment in bringing you different women from different walks of life week after week, because it is so important to tell each woman's story, celebrate her journey, and showcase the impact she's making and how other women are impacting her life, so that together we create an environment where we lift each other up and celebrate each other and honor each other, instead of bringing a scarcity mentality where we need to take away or ignore or diminish another woman for us to shine. So in this vein, today we're going to be talking to a very interesting and accomplished woman who has a very unique role in society. And I'm absolutely delighted for you all to meet Deborah Hamilton. She is an attorney, but she's also a mediator and negotiator in the interest of pets in life circumstances that pulls people apart and puts the pet in the middle of those conflicts, whatever form those conflicts take. So Deborah, welcome. Welcome to Women Investing in Women.
Oh, Kaz and Robin, thank you so much for inviting me. It has been such a wonderful experience getting to know you both, and I'm so looking forward to today.
Absolute delight, and you look lovely. The question that comes to my mind is, having gone through law school, having been an attorney, what moved you and inspired you to choose this field about negotiating and mediating for pets? Because I had never heard of it. And we met through Dr. Cindy, who is a vet. How did you decide to go into this line? Because I don't think that it was a professional line that existed.
No, it wasn't. And there's only a handful of people who use mediation in conflicts over animals. I'm the only person who conflict coaches people through disagreements over an animal or mediates that conflict between parties. It came from a litigation that I did with a lovely couple who adopted a dog, and she was pregnant. And they went back to the rescue and said, hey, she's pregnant and we'll keep her for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Then we'll give her back to you to have the puppies. And the rescue just reacted, unfortunately, and said, no, you have to give us the dog back right away. And of course, as anyone who's owned a dog for a day or two, you're in love with it. There's really no, especially if it's had a hard life before and this dog had come from a rescue. And so they said, no, we really love her. And the vet told me that she has probably 5 more weeks before she'll whelp the puppies, have the puppies. And I'll just keep her and then I'll give her back to you. And unfortunately, the rescue decided to use a pro bono attorney to sue. And so my clients called me and I helped them, and we won the case. Long story short, we won the case and they got to keep the puppies. And I sat there and I said, nobody won here, because the rescue lost someone who had adopted from them several times. And she probably would tell 5 people who would tell 5 people that, oh, this terrible thing happened. And the person who adopted the dog had to spend a lot of money to defend herself against something that could have been discussed. And I had recently come off a stint as a PTA mom. And if any of you have been a PTA mom, you have to learn how to talk to people who you may or may not have coffee with. And so it gave me this skill set that I didn't know I had until that moment. And when I got out of the court and we had won and everybody was thanking me, I said, nobody won here. I said, yes, the dog won because it stayed with you. You're a wonderful family. Yet the rescue lost. And that's unfortunate. So I decided to create a practice that enabled people to take a step back, to breathe, to be listened to for their point of view, and to understand that what Kaz is saying and what Robin is understanding, the meaning of what Kaz is saying, may not necessarily be the same. And so we take a minute to say, so how are you hearing that, Robin? Or how do you mean that, Kaz? And Rob will say, well, she means this. And Kaz will go, oh my God, I didn't mean it that way. And so that's my practice. I create that space where people can have a conversation that enables them to do what's in the best interest of the dog instead of having a third party decide.
This is really, really fascinating. I love the niche that you've created and really the value to society that you're providing. And people really do think of their pets as their children, practically or absolutely. And given the nature of our show, Women Investing in Women, have you found that the viewpoint of the woman relative to the pet needs to be amplified and understood and clarified to the male people around her?
I'm not sure that ever has come up, because in most discussions that I have, especially say in divorce, one party has the dog, male or female, and that party is sort of the power party, right? Because they have the pet and they're not going to return the pet, and no one ever puts in writing what's going to happen to the pet if we break up. I always try to have my matrimonial colleagues make a prenup, petnup, which says, hey, if we get a dog, we're going to remember that we both got the dog, we both love the dog, we're going to share the dog, however that may shake out, but that we'll always be in each other's lives. And that doesn't always happen. So when I'm mad, whether I'm a man or a woman, or I'm two women, or I'm two men, the person with the dog sort of says, too bad. I have the dog, you did A, B, and C, and so I'm going to keep the dog. And I always try to help everyone remember that the pet doesn't hate your ex. We wish they would. They don't. And if anything happened to you, the dog would go to your ex because it's the only other person they know. So when elevating a position, I would say that elevating the position of what's best for the pet is what people should strive to do, not to, fall into that category of, well, I never want to see you again, whether you're a man, a woman, a man, or a woman. There are cottage industries. Google Calendar is my best tool to help people make a plan for their pets. And I'm not talking a week on, a week off. That could kill anyone. Usually, if we do make a plan, we sometimes make a plan where on vacations, the dog would go to you, so that didn't have to go to a kennel. If you were going to the hospital for a procedure, the dog would go to you. It would be something that would enable the dog to still maintain some relationship and not make that relationship so onerous to the exes.
That is a beautiful way of dealing with it. And what's coming up for me as you're talking, Deborah, is in that emotional conflict between two adults, that mindfulness and compassion for the pet is lost because it's a power play between two adults. And literally what you're doing is bringing everybody's emotions so many notches down, and then giving them a perspective different and apart from where they were, to look at it through the eyes of something they loved together, raised together, and shared together. So have you noticed when that conversation happens, they even soften and become more compassionate and understanding towards each other because it's forcing them to think about what they love in common?
It does, Cass. It really does. It creates that memory, that muscle memory that you had when you were, before all the terrible things happened that made the relationship break up. It goes back to the muscle memory of, okay, how did we get this pet? And it softens what you remember. So we always remember the terrible things. It's how, it's sort of like you remember the one teacher who told you you couldn't write a thing, but you never remember the 10 teachers who told you how you were a beautiful writer, right? You only remember the one. So when we're at odds and in distress, we remember all the negative things. And what I try to do is create and have each party create how the pet entered the life. What were you doing then? What were the thoughts then? What were your expectations then? And sometimes they'll go off in yes, and they made promises and they didn't keep the promises. And we explored that because, yeah, they didn't keep the promises. And this is a hurtful time, but it gives a deeper understanding to each party how the other party's feeling above the blaming and shaming game, which doesn't help the pet. And I also often point out that if your pets, you have two, say, and they get into a little bit of a scuffle, they then kiss and make up and move on. Now, you might not be able to do that, but at least for the pet's benefit, you should take some time to recognize your pet wouldn't keep both of you apart. So why should you keep your pet apart from the other party?
Yeah, this is really fascinating how you're looking at it from what is best for the pet, also is in many instances better for both parties. And I think that's really fascinating. So I'm interested in knowing, you talked about how you got this epiphany of sorts for moving into this. How has your life changed, or you changed as a person, as you have had to pivot from being this, an attorney, between two fighting parties, that you've pivoted your practice to helping the pet and helping the people, in terms of the pet? How has your life and your practice changed in that respect?
Robin, I love that question because it is something that has amazed me and amazed my family and my legal friends, because sometimes they will say, well, Deborah, I just, embodied you when I was talking to my client. I just actively listened and asked them to tell me more. And I've created this ability among my attorney friends to really take a step back with whatever case they're doing. My children say, Mom, you're less likely to fly off the handle and be defensive. And I go, it's working, because you have to embody what you are doing. You can't put on a mask and say, well, this is what you should do, but this isn't what I'll do. You have to really embrace it. And when I made the shift, it was really hard. I often call myself a serial mediation training student, because it was so hard for me not to answer for my clients, not to stand up and say, well, this is what you should do. And they would ask me, well, Deborah, what do you think I should do? Tip of my tongue, this is what you should do. And I would bite my tongue and say, well, this isn't really about me. This is about Robin and Kaz and what they're going to do. And you will have to work it out together and you'll get there. And I think the hardest thing for me was that they got where I thought they could get 3 weeks later, that I could have gotten them there in a day or two. However, that would have been me telling them what to do, not enabling them to get there on their own. And I think that's the strength of mediation, of negotiation, not so much because you're going back and forth. I hate the win-lose scenario. I love the win-win scenario where people really work to see things both ways and meet. Bill Urey has a new book out called Possibilities that I recommend to everyone, because you have to think about the possibilities. What could happen? Instead of thinking this is what's going to happen, say what could happen.
That is beyond fascinating for me, because you're truly diffusing the whole situation and you're putting them in a place where they have to talk through this. There is no shutting the other person down, because there is this real living, breathing creature that they have shared their life with, and it's not about each other. So dealing with a third person, third entity, truly brings more perspective to the situation. Is there any particular story, scenario that has surprised you? And if so, just share a scenario with us. Because I think painting a picture with a real scenario will leave a memory for all our audience.
Well, there are so many cases that I've handled where it took I think the thing that really surprises people is it takes a while for people to come around. It's not, we do three episodes or 3 2-hour mediations and we're there. I maybe have had one of those. Some of them take 6 months because it really is difficult. Although you're helping people find their new position, their new way of dealing with it. It's not something that comes easily because they are holding on to their defensiveness and you have to diffuse it, and it doesn't come easily. I remember one of the first cases I ever did was a couple. One lived in Virginia and the other lived in British Columbia after they broke up, and they would come and steal the dog from each other. So one would cross over international lines and steal the dog from Virginia. The other would go over international lines and steal the dog from Canada. And I couldn't even begin to imagine how many laws were being broken or what issues would arise and how things could have gone off the rails. And it was really a thoughtful and challenging conversation with them because there was so much there about the age difference and the pet and the amount of self-identification both parties had with the pet, and that their identity would be lost, and how could they move forward, and what would they do, and you're only trying to hurt me by taking the dog, and all of these things that were so important for them to say and important for the other party to understand, and then recognize that the pet really would benefit by having both of them in their lives. So at the end, it took us 1.5 years, I kid you not. We had an agreement after about 6 months. And if you ever go with your gut, I always say I go with my gut. If I feel something isn't good, I'm going to let everybody take a break. And they were not happy about taking the break. And I said, I just feel as if this doesn't feel real to me. I said, and as a mediator, I need to take a break to process. And I want you to take a break to process, and then call me back when you're ready to move forward with total commitment. And it took them another 9 months to call me back, which seems like a really long time. And I was really worried, and I kept checking in. However, it was the most difficult mediation I've done, and the one that has really shown me that patience and not pushing the parties works the best, because they have been wonderful. They were the ones who wanted to ask me to break confidentiality and talk about what we did because they thought I was so wonderful. And I said, yes, no, because mediations are confidential. So whatever, Kaz and Robin and I talk about as they break up, I don't talk about. They can talk about it if they'd like. We'd like to keep our mediations confidential. So if everybody agrees to be confidential, then all the matter is confidential. But both of them agreed with each other. They were such good friends at the end that they said, yes, we want to. And I think there was a TV program where one of them went on and said, this is what happened, and we think this is the best way to go forward with your pet. So it was a wonderful experience for me, and reinforced that I was on the right path at the beginning when no one was doing this.
This is really, really fascinating. I love the little sentence where you said that they eventually got to where they needed to be. It took them about 3 weeks, and you could have gotten them there. You gotten to that decision, in a day or two. So what is striking to me isn't it that process of going through whatever they went through during that 3 weeks is what helped them become the kind of people who needed to be at that point. So that even if you could have said, okay, here's the right decision, that they themselves would not have been able to be at that right decision had they not gone through this meandering process. And so I'm wondering, how do you help people have the patience and the hope in that end process to continue working through so they get to the end and they don't just give up and throw in the towel and stomp off being a huff?
That's a great question, Robin, because often they do stomp off in a huff, and then you have to get them back because they want their way. And I'm a student of Gary Friedman and Jack Himmelstein. They started the Center for Understanding in California, Northern California, I believe, and maybe Southern California. But the Center for Understanding has this V. And they said you can't go from the top of the V to the top of the V, which is what's the problem and what's the solution. You have to go down the V, because that gives you the ability to find out what everyone's interests are. What is important to you? And often in difficult conversations, we don't articulate what's important to us. They give us a great example in a mother with 2 kids and an orange. It's sort of like the playbook for all mediation trainings. You know, the 2 kids are fighting. The mother takes the orange, she cuts it in half, and they both leave crying. And she goes, "What? You both have half an orange," because she didn't ask questions that found out what their interests were. Their interests were that one needed the skin for the zest and the other needed the segments to do some science project. And because she cut it in half, it was no longer viable for either of them. So that's what we do. When people are really having a difficult time getting them back to the table, we often say, you know, the things that you're feeling are so important, and you need to be able to have time to gather your thoughts, gather your words, and articulate it to me, a neutral. And while you're articulating it to me, Kaz is listening to it, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say, "I never knew you thought that's what I meant. That's not what I meant. That's not what I wanted. That's not," or "No, that wouldn't be what I would do." However, we don't articulate that. We tell the story to ourselves of what Kaz said and what she meant by what she said. However, we don't really ask Kaz. I love Brene Brown says this in one of her books. She was talking about swimming, and her husband was swimming in front of her, and she was talking about how he must think she's fat in her suit and this and that. So she stopped at the swim at the end, and she goes, "The story I'm telling myself is this and this and this." And he turns around and he goes, "I was just swimming laps. I wasn't thinking any of that." And she said, if you have the ability to just stop and say, "You know, when you said that to me, the story I'm telling myself is that you don't want me to have the dog. You don't think I can care for the dog." And the other party might say, "Well, yes, that's what I'm saying." So you've confirmed what they've said. Or they might say, "Oh, no, it's just that I can't think of life without the dog." So you get they're not criticizing you. They're just afraid, or they can't think about living without the dog.
And that is such a powerful reminder to pause and take perspective and truly listen, and listen with the whole being instead of just listen and to interpret words from our perspective. So it's amazing how time flies, Deborah. We're almost towards the end. But what I would love for our audience to hear from you is, one, how they can get a hold of you, and two, any word of wisdom for them to take into their day, into their life, because there is no way you have done mediation and not found ways to influence people's lives in a meaningful way.
Well, second things first, I would love everyone to take away the ability to take a breath. Whenever you feel yourself going into, as I say, your amygdala from your prefrontal cortex, you know it, you feel it, you can say, that little voice in your head is saying, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it," and you do it. Try to take 3 breaths in and out, through your nose, out your mouth. And it's amazing how it will give you the strength to take that break, to take that breath. So if you can do that, whether you're talking to your veterinarian, whether you're talking to your neighbor about your dog, whether you're talking about your ex, if you're, trying to share the dog, breathing through whatever is being said will give you the ability to be more grounded when you answer. And if anyone needs any assistance with any disagreements that happen between animals, so we were talking at the beginning about landlord-tenant and veterinarians and divorce and breeder, owner, handler contracts, anything, you can reach me at info@Hamilton Law, LAW, mediation.com. I also have a wonderful podcast called Why Do Pets Matter, where we talk to people who matter in the animal field. We have veterinarians, we have breeders, we have attorneys who work in the field, and we have everyday people who just love animals and work in the field to help them flourish and help the people who love them flourish. So again, you can reach me. Just go on the website, Hamilton Law Mediation, and drop me a note, and you'll be able to get in touch with me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deborah. This has been an enlightening conversation. It truly has been an eye-opening conversation. And we appreciate what you do and the understanding and compassion you bring into this conversation. Because ultimately what you're doing is bridging the human relationship, right? Pets become the conduit to bridge that human relationship. And at the end of the day, there's less anger, there's less hate, there is less viciousness between two humans in whatever relationship and capacity they're in. And to our audience out there, Robin and I truly hope that this conversation has resonated for you. And whether it's a pet or somebody you love in your life, fighting over them is not going to change anything. In fact, it makes that third party's life far more complicated and heartbreaking. So take a pause and look at the situation through that third perspective, because it's not your way or my way. It's not Robin's way or Cass's way. What is that third way? And in there is the solution, not just for the situation, but for the two conflicting parties.